Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadi alladhina istafa. Amma ba'd. قال تعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإن إلياس لمن المرسلين. وقال تعالى: واذكر إسماعيل واليسع وذا الكفل وكل من الأخيار. صدق الله العظيم. Dear respected brothers, elders, sisters, and anybody that's listening, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yesterday we talked about the grand kingdom of Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with many blessings. He had the control of the wind. He had the control of speaking to the animals. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam such kingdom that was never witnessed before or will never be witnessed again. And Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam called people to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And people were worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, living a prosperous life, thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His favors upon them. But after Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam passing away, the people started going against the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They started to rebel against the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They ignored the messages of the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To such an extent, people started to do shirk, people started to do kufr, they were unjust amongst one another, there was crime, there was injustice, and all this fitna and fasad took over the world. And that used to happen many of the time, and we witness this today when there's a pious person amongst us. Alhamdulillah, you will see that there's a good environment around. But as soon as the pious person leaves the world, because of him departing this world, those same caliber of people do not remain. And people start to indulge into sin. And they forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what would happen after the demise of the prophets. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would send another prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remind them what their purpose of creation is, who they should worship, and that this life is only a temporary abode. We're only in this dunya for a short amount of time. Our real success is the hereafter. So after the demise of Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam and the people going against the teachings of Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam, and people started to worship idols, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appointed Prophet Ilyas. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِذْ قَالَ لِقَوْمِي أَلَا تَتَّقُونَ. Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam said to them, do you not fear Allah? أَتَدْعُونَ بَعْلًا وَتَذَرُونَ أَحْسَنَ الْخَالِقِينَ. Do you invoke Baal and ignore the best of the creators? The people of Israel at that time and the king of Israel at that time, they started to worship an idol called Baal. So Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam, he would give them da'wat to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the idols can't benefit you, they can't help you, they can't listen to your dua, they can't do anything to you. And Prophet Ilyas would say to them that you invoke Baal, this idol, and you've left and you've ignored the best of creators, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah Rabbakum wa Rabba Abaikum al-Awwaleen. That is Allah who is your Lord and the Lord of your forefathers. Who was their forefathers? Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam, Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, the illustrious lines of prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right to Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam. These were all descendants, the Bani Israel. But these people ignored the plea, the call of Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam. Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam, he was in the court of the king, giving him da'wat towards the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the king would mock him that we should leave what our fathers and forefathers worship, these idols, and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They would laugh and they would mock Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam. Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam would remind them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of every single thing. Allah created you and me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has given us a purpose in this life, and that's to worship Him. But the king, he rejected the call of Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam. Instead, he ordered his guards to kill Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam. Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam, he escaped and he hid away from these people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a severe punishment on these people. They suffered from drought and famine, and because of this many people lost their lives. Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam, he still prayed for his people. He prayed that Allah have mercy upon them. So when the king passed away, his successor, another king, some of their people listened to the message of Prophet Ilyas and they became Muslims. But the second king, he also ignored the message of Prophet Ilyas, and instead he ordered those people that become believers and worship one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they should be killed. And he ordered the killing of the believers. This is the difficult mission that every prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had to go through. They wanted the best for their community. They wanted their community to understand and to benefit and to be successful in dunya and in akhirat. But the people, they were masad. They wanted to enjoy the dunya, the pleasures of this temporary world. Or they were suppressed by the kings into worshipping them and to worshipping idols. So whenever the poor people would embrace Islam, when they would bring faith, they found freedom. They were freed from the worship of idols or being forced to worship some god under the instruction of some king. So Islam is a religion that frees people from the worship of creation to the worship of the Creator. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ahsanul Khaliqeen, the best of the creators. People throughout history worship the sun, the moon, the stars, but these are the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They ignored the Creator and they worship the creation. People in history worship the trees, they worship the rivers because they thought they benefited them and helped them. So again, they ignored the Creator and they worship the creation. And that's why all the prophets of Allah that came explained to their people, don't worship these stones, don't worship the rivers, don't worship any of these things. They don't benefit you, they don't help you. The only one that listens to you is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the creator of all things. When Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam, he along with his believers, one day they were on their journey in preaching towards the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They passed by a field, and when they passed by this field, there was a young man who was plowing his field. And when he saw Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam, and when he saw that his companions following the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his prophets, he was taken back. So he stopped them. This young man was called Al-Yasa, and he said to them, I want to offer you hospitality. I want to do your khidmat. I want to feed you. So he slaughtered an ox, he cooked it, and he fed the righteous people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now when Ilyas alayhi salam was about to depart, Al-Yasa, he expressed that I want to join you in your journey. I want to be in your company. I want to learn from you. I want to sit with you. I want to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam, he gave permission to Al-Yasa alayhi salam to join him. When Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam was on his deathbed and about to leave this world, he said to Prophet Al-Yasa, what do you desire? What do you want? So I can make dua for you. I can pray and supplicate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for you. Al-Yasa alayhi salam responded that I want those same blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you. So after the death of Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose Al-Yasa to be the prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So today we're talking about three prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All three of them have been mentioned twice in the Holy Quran. Prophet Ilyas, Prophet Al-Yasa, and Prophet Dhul Kifl. So Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam, he was the successor to Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam. And then when Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam passed away, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose Prophet Al-Yasa to be the prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Prophet Al-Yasa, he was the cousin of Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam. He was sent to the people of Yariya to preach the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they gave him a warm reception. They listened to Prophet Al-Yasa. They took his message and they started to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they started obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The people, they were going through starvation and hardship. Prophet Al-Yasa, he made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah removed this famine from these people. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed many bounties and favors upon his community. Once Prophet Al-Yasa was becoming old, he wanted a deputy, somebody who would be a successor, who would continue to call toward the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he called everybody together and he said, my deputy has to be that person who has three qualities inside him. The first quality, he fasts all year round. The second quality is every night he spends in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the third quality he does not lose his temper. These three qualities, whoever possesses these three qualities will become my deputy. So, these three conditions, not everybody has the ability to control their temper or to worship every single night or to fast every single day. So not everybody stood up. But only one person, he stood up. His name was Dhul Kifl alayhi salam. And he said, I will observe fast every single day. I will pray throughout the night and I will control my temper, my anger. So Prophet Al-Yasa told him to sit down. And again, Prophet Al-Yasa made the announcement, who wants to be my deputy? He must have these three qualities. Again, Prophet Dhul Kifl stood up and he said, I will possess these three qualities. I will become your deputy. Again, Prophet Al-Yasa told Dhul Kifl alayhi salam to sit down. And the third time he made this announcement, who will want to be my deputy? But he must have these three qualities. And again, Dhul Kifl alayhi salam stood up and he said, I will possess these three qualities. So Prophet Al-Yasa appointed Prophet Dhul Kifl alayhi salam to be his deputy. After some time, before the appointment of prophethood upon Dhul Kifl, Shaitan, Iblis, tried to test Dhul Kifl alayhi salam to see if he can really control his anger. So he would disguise as an old man. So Dhul Kifl alayhi salam, during the day he would fast, during the night he would worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he would only sleep in the afternoon, the siesta, the qaylullah, only for a short amount of time. That's the only sleep he would have. So this old man, he came to Prophet, to Dhul Kifl alayhi salam, at the time of his siesta, at the time he needed to go to sleep. And he said, oh, the people, my people, they've done wrong to me. Please, I want you to listen to my story and decide upon us. So Dhul Kifl alayhi salam, he said, come back in the morning. When I deal with the affairs of the people, I will deal with your affair. So what happened was, the time of siesta passed and Dhul Kifl did not go to sleep. The next morning, Dhul Kifl was expecting this old man in his court so that he could decide his matter. But Iblis, Shaitan, he didn't turn up. And then when Dhul Kifl, in the afternoon, he went to his own home to go to sleep for his siesta, his qaylullah, again there was a knock on the door, and it was Shaitan again, disguised as an old man, trying to test Dhul Kifl alayhi salam. And Dhul Kifl said to him, I said to you, come in the morning. He said, yes, but my people, they were doing harm to me and I didn't get the time to come. So I'm sorry. So can you listen to me now? And on purpose, Iblis, Shaitan, he wasted the time of siesta so that Dhul Kifl doesn't go to sleep. And the second day, Dhul Kifl, his time was wasted with this man. And again, Dhul Kifl said to him, come back in the morning and I will deal with your issue. So 2 days and Dhul Kifl has not gone to sleep. So on the third day, Dhul Kifl was expecting this old man in the court so that he can deal with his matter, but he didn't turn up. So in the afternoon, when Dhul Kifl alayhi salam went to his home, he wanted to sleep. For 2 days he hasn't slept. During the day he keeps a fast, during the night he worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And now sleep was overtaking him. So he told one of the guards at his door that make sure don't let anybody in. I haven't slept for 2 days. So Dhul Kifl alayhi salam was about to go to sleep, and again this old man, Shaitan disguised as an old man, he appears at the door, and the guardman says, "You're not allowed in." Shaitan manages to find a hole in the wall and enter the room, and he wakes up Dhul Kifl. And Dhul Kifl was surprised that how did this man enter the house? And he realized that this is not a man, he's not a human. And he asked him, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm Iblis, and I'm testing your temper, your anger. I'm trying to make you angry, but you're not getting angry." So these were the title given to Dhul Kifl for his piety, of his justice, and the name given to the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So just after this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after the demise of Prophet Al-Yasa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose Dhul Kifl alayhi salam to be a Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Prophet Dhul Kifl alayhi salam, he told the Bani Israel that we must do jihad and wage war against those people that are causing mischief on the earth. So the Bani Israel, they were scared of death and they didn't want to fight. And we've learned this in history from Prophet Musa alayhi salam. They would say to Prophet Musa alayhi salam, "You and your Lord go to fight, whilst we stay behind." And Allah punished the Bani Israel. And throughout history, Bani Israel have always been scared of death. And they've always rejected the call of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet. So this caused the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The how they disobey a Prophet of Allah subhanahu the order of Allah, the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how they disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a calamity, a plague on these people, and many of them died miserably. Their houses were left deserted, and as they tried to run away, their death overcame these people. When Prophet Dhul Kifl alayhi salam, he saw the predicament of his followers and what happened to them, that they've been killed for disobeying the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, "O Allah, you have perished my followers. Take pity on them and give them a new life." Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala listened to the dua, the supplication of Prophet Dhul Kifl alayhi salam, and he brought these people, the Bani Israel, back alive. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused this a bounty towards them. Allah gave them a new life. Allah gave them another chance to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to obey the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many favors, how many blessings Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed the Bani Israel. But every single time they would ignore and they would transgress the laws and the commandments of Allah and His Prophet. So today we talked about 3 prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Each one of them was a successor to the other prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. After Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam came Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam. He has been mentioned in the Holy Quran twice by name. After Prophet Ilyas alayhi salam came Prophet Al-Yasa alayhi salam. Again, he has been mentioned twice in the Holy Quran. And after Prophet Al-Yasa alayhi salam, his successor was Prophet Dhul Kifl alayhi salam, and he was mentioned twice in the Holy Quran by name. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاذْكُرْ إِسْمَعِيلَ وَالْيَسَى وَذَا الْكِفْلِ وَكُلٌّ مِّنَ الْأَخْيَارِ. And remember Ismail and Al-Yasa and Dhul Kifl, each one of them was amongst the best of the righteous. So these were the stories of these three beautiful prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give the ability and the tawfiq to follow in the way of the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the message that they brought. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.